Time. Time. That was the one I had to grapple with the most. Now, keep in mind, too, the business that I started in, we would show up, so residential I started on, we show up at 9 o'clock in the morning. We do our little morning hoedown, whatever you want to call it, our trainings, workshops, whatever. We hit the field. We'd come back to the office at the end of the day for evening atmosphere and settling up and all this other stuff. So the days went from 9 a.m. till around 10:30 p.m. every day. Those were 5 days a week. And then Saturday, the sixth day, was a short day. Get a life night is how they even framed it, but the day would start at 9 and it would be done by 6. So you only had really a Saturday night to go, whatever tension you need to relieve is going to happen Saturday night. That's your night to go to the club or do whatever you're going to do. And you had Sunday, and then let's do it all over again. Let's run it back. So the time was pretty intense. But even in today's environment, you guys aren't going to do an evening atmosphere. But if you're doing the business right, you're working like a dog. If anybody's working 40 hours a week, you can't call yourself an entrepreneur. There is no entrepreneur anywhere on the planet that tells you they work 40 hours a week. Like, you gotta hump it. You gotta put in the time. When I say put in the time, like, really, if we're to clock your field time, and we have clocked your field time, most of you are only working around 30 hours a week in the field. Store time is about 30 hours. So you're certainly not overworked in the store. But then you got your office time here, and then you've got your team nights there and stuff like that. But if you add up all your hours, it's probably around 40, 45. I would compel you all to say, well, put in another 20 hours of really productive growth. Like, really productive. Now, when I started in the business, I moved to Southern California. I moved from Canada to Southern California. I had no friends. It was the biggest advantage I had, is I had no friends. I was a total loser. So there'd be a guy in the office, and I'm like, hey, what do you do for fun? Oh, yeah, me and my girlfriend, we have season tickets to Magic Mountain. I'm like, oh, what's that? You don't know Magic Mountain, Jamie? Best roller coasters, amusement park, blah, blah, blah. I'm like, oh, when are you guys going? Actually, we're going this Sunday. I'm like, well, can I come? So I'd invite myself into people's lives. I remember taking this guy, Angelo, had this, looked like Rocky Balboa, this Italian guy, Angelo, and he's talking about Mama's lasagna. She makes the best lasagna. He's making my mouth drool with like the kind of food that they eat in his household. I'm like, how often you guys do big family dinners? Oh, we do big family dinner every Saturday night. I'm like, can I come? So I kept inviting myself into people's worlds. And funny, I didn't have the same level of turnover that other leaders were experiencing. Other leaders would tell me things like, yeah, I got these guys flaking on me. They don't show up the next day. I'm like, they don't show up the next day? Like, they don't even call you? No. Jamie, doesn't that happen to you? I'm like, no. You've never had anybody flake on you? I'm like, no. I mean, I've had people quit on me, but there's always a conversation. And I started putting two and two together. Because of all the time I'm spending with my people outside of work, it translated into a sense of loyalty. It translated into integrity. Like, if somebody's feeling down, doesn't want to work anymore, Jamie, can I talk to you? Instead of just like ghosting people. But put in the time. Put in the hours in relationship building. Like, that's stuff that isn't really measured much. But, I mean, my field experience, I looked at it like I have 7 breakfast opportunities and 7 dinner opportunities. I got 14 opportunities to have one-on-ones, and I took full advantage of those 14 windows. So are you looking at your time that way? Are you reading rich literature? Are you getting smarter? Are you going to the gym, maybe people on your team, and you guys are getting in shape together, and you guys are like, I mean, to me, I love that exercise because you're knocking 2 birds with 1 stone. You're developing relationships, and you're taking care of your body physically. That's a double win. I'll take double wins all day long. I'll go to baseball games with the crew and my family. That's a triple win. I look for those all the time. I'm winning as a dad because I got my kids at the ball game. I'm winning with my teammates because we're spending time together outside of work. I'm entertained. I'm watching baseball. I'm just a royal winner here. Triple win. But look for those times outside of work that aren't measured on the clock to double down in your business. Put the time into your business. Like Elon, when he started his business with PayPal, like his first business, you know, he looked at it like, well, the average engineer is working 50 hours a week. I'm going to work 100. I'm going to get ahead twice as fast. He's working 100 hours a week. He slept in his office. He'd shower at the local gym. He didn't have a place of residence. But we need a little bit of that Elon Musk entrepreneurial like flair way before the money shows up. I find, I don't know, and maybe, Jay, that's old school, we're all seeking work-life balance now. There's a big push of a 4-day work week and all that stuff. That's not the life of an entrepreneur. I mean, I work every day. Every day. I'm productive, I'm working every day, texting. Most of my work now is through like electronics. It's not like I'm coming in with a suit every day into an office, 7 days a week, but there's not a day that goes by that I'm not working. I would find it so stressful to like completely 100% unplug and not care what's going on anywhere around me. If Dom has a problem going on in his office, I want to know about it. I couldn't go to Hawaii and just, I'm off the grid, guys, for 2 weeks, let me put an auto reply back, bounce back email type stuff. I've never done that. I want to know the problems. I want to work a couple hours a day while I'm in Hawaii, solving little issues, trying to add value, trying to be of service. But I've got that entrepreneurial gene that I love to work. So get that muscle where you just love to work. You love to be productive. My wife has benefited from, she sacrificed for sure. I remember a girlfriend of hers who was in our wedding party. She was a bridesmaid. She, early on into our marriage, I didn't even know this conversation happened until years later. She questioned, did you marry the right guy? To Joanne. And it was because I was never home for dinner ever, other than on the weekend. I was working 14 hours a day. And so she's got this, poor Joanne, did you marry the right guy? He's obsessed about his work. And so my wife had to kind of suck it up. If I sacrificed my time, if the hardest thing is time, well, she would say the same thing. The hardest part about being married to an entrepreneur is the time. Fast forward the clock, well, now we have an abundance of time together. I think she prefers to get me out of the house more often, to be honest with you. But we have lots of time, we have lots of travel, we do all that stuff. So she's got the benefit of that. But she doesn't give me the pushback on it. She's just always been supportive. I remember even when we were dating, I'm trying to figure out, is this the girl I'm going to marry? And I was talking about, front loading a career so you could have the freedom of time on the back end versus, back loading your career. Like the older you get, the harder you have to work. And she said to me, she goes, yeah, I watched my dad have to work harder as he got older. And she goes, I don't think that's really the right way to go. So if you're telling me you'll have the freedom of time later when it really matters, when the kids show up on the scene and you can be their coach and you can be a present father, if you got to sacrifice all that time today, hey, sign me up. I'm all into that. I'm like, all right, good to know that she buys into that. Okay, maybe I should marry this girl. Because the previous girl before that had a huge issue with the fact that she just never got the time. We'd go on dates, and I'd always bring one of my guys from the office with me. Can't we ever get one-on-one time? No, I got a new guy, Bob, here. I got to talk to Bob about his day. She could never get one-on-one time with me. What's Bob doing in the bed here with us? I'm like, well, Bob, I'm breaking down his numbers. Got to go through all the numbers with Bob from the previous day. All right, sorry, PG-13 here for you guys. But I remember as we're breaking up, I remember saying this to this girl. I felt bad. I'm like, would you rather me be have a normal job, like be a school teacher, or I'm only working 40 hours a week, so I've got time for you, or more time for you now? And she's like, yeah, that's exactly what I want. I'm like, oh, I should have asked you this 2 years ago. Why did we waste the last? It wasn't a waste by any means, but she just, for the life of her, could not grasp the mindset of an entrepreneur, which is an entrepreneur front loads without pay. Look at all the richest people in the world. They all have this in common. Rock stars, athletes, entrepreneurs, all of them have this in common. They were all overworked and underpaid. And then eventually the script flipped on them where they were overpaid and underworked. Every one of them. There's no exception. Right, they created the positive momentum, but they bought into, even the Beatles. There's some interesting stories of the Beatles. They were so bad with music, hard to even So bad. The Beatles were bad? Aren't they one of the greatest rock bands of all time? No, they were so bad they couldn't even get gigs in England. Local bars in England, like, you guys suck, man. Go sing all your peace, love, whatever. Go somewhere else. They had to go to Germany where people didn't even speak English. They had nothing to do but play music for 14 hours a day in all these German pubs. The Beatles, John Lennon, Paul McCartney. Like, can you imagine? So they got good, but they were entrepreneurs. They put in the time. They were overworked and underpaid, and eventually they became overpaid for their work. But there's no exception to that. Find me a millionaire that tells you, like, I've never heard this. Yeah, Jane, I started my business. I worked 30 hours a week, made $1 million my first year. I have yet to hear that. I'd love to hear that. Never heard it. Like, so you got to front load. You have to digest that bite. It doesn't taste good because I think by human nature we'd all rather be underworked and overpaid for everything. But if you ever want to be underworked and overpaid, the price of entry for that is at some point in time you have to be willing to be overworked and underpaid. And looking at the numbers, I mean, Dom gave me the numbers. It doesn't look like you guys are underpaid. Like a lot of you guys are doing really well. I would just challenge you to do more. And you can do it with your girlfriend, do it with your boyfriend, your spouse. Like, again, read books, start a book club. But do things like that. Have people over to your house, do a book study together with them at your house, people that you're working with. Like, just do more to speed this thing up. Like, be that entrepreneur. Be willing to be overworked and underpaid. But if you don't feel overworked, you're probably not doing it right. But to me, the biggest sacrifice was time.